DermBiz Episode 8. In this episode, we interview Dr. Erica Linnell of Linnell Dermatology. Dr. Linnell shares how she started her dermatology practice. She also shares some great success tips for any dermatologists who are looking to start their own dermatology practice or just starting now. And she also shares how she created her advisory team and her overall workforce at her dermatology practice. DermBiz Episode 8. Let's get started. Welcome to DermBiz. I'm excited to talk to our guest today. I'm going to give a quick intro. Our guest today is Dr. Erica Linnell. She is the founder and medical director of Linnell Dermatology and Aesthetics, located in Seattle, Washington. Dr. Linnell opened her practice in January of 2021. She provides medical and cosmetic dermatology for the metropolitan Seattle area. She is a founder, an entrepreneur, an excellent doctor, a mom, a wife, and just an overall butt kicker. We have her on the show today, so I'm excited to introduce Dr. Linnell. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction.
Absolutely. I mean, I think to myself, thinking about all the hats that you wear and everything that you do, how do you juggle all of these things at one time? I mean, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're an entrepreneur, and you're a doctor. All of these things. How are you juggling all of these things?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, it's not easy. And a lot of times I feel like I'm just not doing it very well, but you just kind of take it day by day, I guess, you know? I always joke, like, when I get back to work on Monday morning, I'm like, oh, my easy job has started. You know, my tough job is over for the weekend. Like, being with the kids and, like, you know, I really try to just leave work at work and not do any work on the weekends. But yeah, being with kids and, like, cleaning and cooking and, you know, being with a 5 and a 7-year-old and, you know, like negotiating time to go to the gym and all this stuff with your husband, like, all that stuff is just like the tough part of life right now, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, you know, not that running a practice is easy, but I get back here on Monday and I kind of breathe a sigh of relief, you know? I don't have to, like, cook for anybody or clean up after anybody.
Absolutely.
But it's hard. I mean, it's not easy. You just have to take it day by day. And, you know, everybody says, like, you know, you just have to cherish this time when your kids adore you and want to be with you. So I really, you know, I try to keep that in mind too, because they won't always let, you know, they won't always, I mean, there'll come a day when they just don't want to have anything to do with us. So, you know,
right.
Then we'll go back to working 7 days a week, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So what I'm interested in, Erica, we're just going to jump right into it. I'm interested in your process on deciding to open and start your own practice. You know, clearly you finished up your residency, you started working in a career. It looks like you worked for a couple of different practices before you started your own. What was your thought process like when you were deciding, you know what, I don't want to work for somebody else. Here are the reasons why I want to start a practice. And here are the reasons why I feel like I'm going to be successful at it. What was that thought process for you?
Yeah. You know, I guess it had always been in the back of my mind that I wanted to start my own practice. I just liked the idea of, you know, the business side and just running a business. And I'm very organized, and I just like that aspect of, you know, life. Just, I don't know, just having something that I can run myself. And so I worked for a few different practices before. And it was really good because I got, you know, I got a lot of experience, and I think you have to get to the point, or for me, I felt like I wanted to get to the point where dermatology, you know, you can just do, it's like second nature, you know, you don't need somebody to, like, back you up all the time. You feel competent being on your own. And then you can kind of really start to think about, like, well, how would you have your practice different than these practices? What do they do that you really like? What can you learn from them? What do you want to do that's different? So I kind of was like, even throughout, when I first started, I was sort of thinking about it in the back of my mind. So I really wanted to, I just always knew that I really wanted to have my own.
Absolutely. You just
Yeah.
mentioned the idea of kind of watching what other people have done
Hmm.
and figuring out
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm not going to do
Hmm.
this. I maybe do a little bit more of this. I remember when Mercy was in the process of starting her own practice, and her and I would be doing brainstorming and figuring out what we're going
Yeah.
to do. With her
Hmm.
working for a big, huge, I call them a chain
Yeah.
dermatology practice.
Hmm.
She knew that she didn't want to be the high volume. How many people can we see per
Yeah.
day? Um, Big, huge, kind of bureaucratic organization. She
Yeah.
wanted to, kind of focus on quality and
Yeah.
experience, kind of the opposite approach to that big,
Yeah.
process. And that's what we've
Yeah.
implemented in our practice. What were some of the things that you saw that you said, that's not for me? I feel like I can do this better. They should be doing it
Yeah.
this way. And here's how I'm going to do it differently.
Yeah. I mean, definitely I had the same feeling when I worked for a big kind of like chain practice. Just they didn't really do a lot of cosmetic stuff, and cosmetic has always been, I mean, it was a huge part of our training in New York
Mm,
City, and, we were lucky we were able to get that. And so I definitely wanted to incorporate more of that. And like, just for an example, I wanted to bring on, like, chemical peels or Botox or something. And then also, like you said, I mean, wanting to offer like a really, like, just from the beginning, I've always said like customer service is just number one. I want people to really want to come here and offer them like a really concierge like practice. I mean, the
mm,
way that cosmetic dermatology especially is, especially in a bigger city like Seattle. I mean, people can go anywhere.
mhm,
There's an injector on every corner. But
mhm.
why do they come here? And we wanted to offer them, like, from start to finish, a really amazing experience. I always told myself, like, as the owner, I don't want to get to the point where I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. Like,
Mm,
I don't know what the front desk is saying to people. And, I
mm.
don't know that this patient left pissed, or somebody called and I didn't get the message. So,
Absolutely.
um, yeah, and to be honest, it wasn't like a lot of things that my other practices were doing wrong. It was just more that always wanted to I wanted to be the owner.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Um, one question I have for you is, what's been some of the biggest, one of the some of the biggest challenges you face as you run and operating your practice? I'll share one of our biggest challenges.
Yeah.
At first, because we started in a mindset that we don't want to become this big behemoth where we don't have control over quality, we don't have control
Mhm.
over, there's so much bureaucracy. We wanted to get away from that. And I think we went the opposite way initially. For the first few years,
Mhm.
it was mainly just Mercy. It was
Mhm.
Mercy, and then it was kind of like she was like
Yeah.
Beyonce and we were like the backup dancers. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
she would
Yeah.
show up every day and do her thing, and my
Yeah.
job was to manage the business stuff, and we had a couple of
Yeah.
nurses, and we had a admin who was kind of answering the phones and doing all that stuff, and then we had a admin who
Yeah.
was the front desk, and we were just kind of like a traveling band, going around to
Yeah.
these different
Yeah.
locations because we didn't have a space. And it
Yeah.
worked out very well. We had huge profit margins. We didn't have a lot of expenses. Our monthly
Yeah.
rent total was maybe like, $1,900 or something like that. This is five
Yeah.
days a week.
Yeah.
Our expenses were very low. Um, and it was a lot of benefits to that. But what we found was it was a very, very risky proposition because
Mhm.
if Mercy got sick, or if
Yeah.
if any little small thing happened, it kind of knocked everything off track, and we realized that we didn't
Yeah.
really have a business. We have basically just created Mercy's dream job. It
Yeah.
wasn't really a business; it was
Yeah.
a job with a bunch of supporting parts.
Yeah.
And then we decided to start to grow, and we hired
Mhm.
all these people. We tripled, quadrupled in size, and then we're like, oh crap, this is a whole
Yeah.
nother set of problems. We're
Yeah.
dealing with huge expenses in healthcare costs and huge expenses
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
rent. And now I think we've dialed it back a little bit, and we're still trying to find that sweet spot. So those have been kind of the major challenges that we've been kind of trying to figure out.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that you've been going through as you started your practice?
I mean, a lot of it is sort of similar. I think for me personally, the biggest challenge has been um, really kind of that accounting side of like how do I know, like, is it worthwhile to hire somebody? Is it, how much overhead should I really be having? Like, what should the percentage be? Like, should I expand or shouldn't I? Should I give my this staff member a raise? Like, just having the answers to some of those questions, like, where I'm just kind of, I was just kind of floating along, like,
Mm-hmm.
kind of go with the flow, like, oh, we'll see what happens, I guess, with the numbers at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So for me, that's been honestly the biggest challenge. So kind of similar, like, because when you first start, yeah, we started pretty small and the overhead was pretty low, and then you grow. So then, yeah, you hire more people. You have you give your staff members more benefits or raises.
Mm-hmm.
We did an expansion. You decide, oh, let's buy a couple more devices, and then you
Mm-hmm.
look at it and you're like, whoa, now we need to scale back. So I think for me, the accounting part of it and just knowing where the business stands has been a challenge. And honestly, still sometimes I think I've learned a lot in the last 3 years, but that's a challenge. So if I could go back and do things differently, I would say having a really, really, really good accountant and bookkeeper who can help you and give you like monthly updates and kind of help guide you, or say like, hey, look, you're headed towards this sort of like profit this year, so be ready to pay these taxes,
Yeah.
or like buy a device, like, what do you need to add on, just to
Yeah.
kind of help me keep better tabs, so that at the end of the year I'm not like shocked by my tax liability or my lack of income or whatever, just kind of
Yeah.
helping me keep better track all along. Or making decisions like, should I hire I hired a PA last year, and it was a great decision, I think, professionally for me. But at the time, it was kind of like, yeah, I'll hire her. I don't really know if I should or if this makes sense financially, but I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
hire her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So making decisions in a more informed way. That would
Absolutely.
be something that if I could go back, I would do it a little differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like I said, quite frankly, Erica, that's the reason why one of the reasons
Mhm.
why I started this podcast, and I want to be able to connect with
Yeah.
other people, just to be able to start that conversation. Because although
Mhm.
there may be differences in people's practices, for example,
Yeah.
we serve mostly a rural area. You
Mhm.
serve, one of the most
Mhm.
metropolitan areas in the country,
Mhm.
and so we're going to
Mhm.
have some differences. But by us speaking and talking about what we're going through, we can learn from each other's,
Yeah.
successes and
Yeah.
mistakes. And the cool thing
For
about
sure.
being the owner is when you make a
Yeah.
mistake, you can fix the mistake.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Exactly.
wallow in it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something about people, like about hiring people and staff. How do
Yeah.
you determine how much you should pay people? Because I know for us, this is kind of what we did. We kind of looked at what the because besides us here in the in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, there's the
Mhm.
chain
Yeah.
dermatology, And so we just kind of always try to like outdo them, you know. So
Yeah.
we find out, oh, they're paying this, we're gonna pay that plus this, or you know,
Yeah.
that probably, I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but in our mind, we're competing for talent, we're
Yeah.
competing for people. And so
Yeah.
if a person wants to be in derm, it's kind of us or them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, we try to, that's kind of how we set our mark. How are you thinking through how to decide how much you pay your people?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't pay that much. I'm gonna kind of offer on the low end, and I think with time, based on the low end, based on like what I knew, my other practices paid their staff. So
Mhm.
I kind of lowballed it a little bit, and then I think with time, then I realized like, you know, yeah, I mean, good staff is hard to find, and if you
Absolutely.
find them, the other about a year ago, I hired a couple new MAs, and I ended up listing the job for a little bit higher range of pay, and I got way better applicants. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So I think also you get what you pay for.
absolutely.
So I have, and as I've become more comfortable, like I said, kind of knowing those numbers and knowing how much you can kind of afford for payroll and all that, I'm more comfortable offering a little more. And I mean, when it comes to taxes and tax liability, if you have to spend money a little more on staff, I think that's a good place to put it. So
I
yeah,
agree
I've
100%.
definitely, again, it comes down to like knowledge. So now that I'm more comfortable with numbers, I'm more comfortable, offering a little bit more. But yeah, I think I do try to stay competitive because we have a lot of those private equity groups or big hospital systems, and they're offering, great pay, benefits, paid vacation, all this stuff that as a smaller practice, we offer some good things, but it's, their benefits package doesn't really meet some of these big practices what they offer and hospitals.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
Don't you feel like I, I almost get the impression that I look at our staff and we
Mhm.
have amazing staff. Now,
Mhm.
I had who was it? Somebody came to our practice and they commented on our staff and they were like, "Man, how did you get such great staff?" And
Yeah.
I said, "Because we had to go through a lot of other people, and these are the people who are left over."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
got 10 great people, I look through because a lot of our hiring we did on Indeed, and I just looked through over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years how many people have
Yeah.
came and went. Some because we've had to let them go, some because they just
Mhm.
found out the way we operate isn't for them.
Mhm.
The cream kind of rises to the top,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everyone else kind of self determines
Yeah.
themselves.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that when you have a small practice and you have great people in that small practice, I want to get your opinion on this. But
Yeah.
my thesis is the type of
Mhm.
person who succeeds well in a small practice wouldn't want to go work for a big hospital or a big, because
Yeah.
it's completely different. It's like what we may not be able to offer in a benefits package,
Yeah.
we can offer in autonomy. We can offer
Yeah.
in, it's something to be said when you can just walk down the
Yeah.
hall and talk to your boss and knock on their door,
Yeah.
as opposed to some
Exactly.
mystical figure that's you
Yeah.
see once every 3 or 4 months and you're nervous because you don't know what's going to happen. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on, the private practice, the type of people who would thrive in a private practice
Yeah.
compared to the big company type of people?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that the small private practice offers a lot more, career satisfaction for people. Not just us, but for everyone who works here. It's
Hmm.
like you said, the boss is accessible. We have staff meetings occasionally, probably not as much as we should, but you can touch base with your colleagues very easily. Um, we're all kind of like a family. Like
Hmm.
somebody has to be out because of childcare. It's like no big deal. Like, hope
Yeah.
everything goes well, you know,
Yeah.
hope she's feeling better or whatever, you know. So it's like everyone is very supportive of each other. Um, and I think it's it's just a higher quality of work life, you know.
Yes.
Not that you know, people want to necessarily live at work, but you know, if you can be happy at work and feel like the people around you are supportive of you and
Right.
know you really well,
Hmm.
and you know, you can go to them with any kind of issues or problems, I think that makes just the work environment so much better.
I
You know,
agree. I
yeah.
agree. And you mentioned the work environment. What is your approach to work life balance? You know, a lot of people talk about work life
Yeah.
balance, and I
Yeah.
remember when I was talking, you know, with my
Yeah.
then girlfriend, now wife, when she was trying to figure out where she wanted to specialize in,
Yeah.
and when she was
Yeah.
in med school, and
Mhm.
you know, dermatology kept coming up, and everybody talked about this amazing lifestyle, you
Yeah.
know, that dermatologists have.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how does that how does that lifestyle sync with now actually owning and running your own
Yeah.
practice as opposed
Yeah.
to just doing dermatology? And what's your
Yeah.
approach and thought
Yeah.
process around work life balance?
Well, I think, like I said, I mean, okay, first of all, dermatology is a great field. You know, it's
Hmm.
probably one of the best fields to be in if you value work life balance, you know. I mean, I think there are definitely other fields that you can be in, you know, where you kind of clock in, clock out, you just work at the hospital, you have shifts or whatever. But
Hmm.
um, I think for dermatology, it's just different. You know, it's office hours, like, you know, 9 to 5 kind of thing, very few emergency calls, things like
Hmm.
that. So
Hmm.
it's, first of all, you know, dermatology is a pretty easy field to be in as far as work life balance goes.
Hmm.
But yeah, running your own practice is a whole nother, you know, whole nother job, essentially. You're
Hmm.
just a small business owner now and like a
Hmm.
dermatologist on the side, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, I think the first year or so, it was probably a lot more work, you know, where I worked 5 days a week. I know that's still not as much as, you know, some doctors work,
But
or
but in
entrepreneurs,
Durham,
but
in Durham, that's a
yeah,
serious time
yeah,
commitment. Wait a minute,
yeah,
5 days a week?
5
What's
days.
going on?
I know. Can you imagine? I know. 5 days a week. And but like the mental work, you know, I was never stopped thinking about it. It was like always on my mind. Oh, I need to do this, that. You know, my to-do list was like 10 miles long. And then once you get past that hump of, like, you know, as we've talked about, there's just a really steep learning curve.
Hmm.
As doctors, we don't really learn a lot about business or running a business. I mean, some doctors do. They have like combined MBA programs and stuff now, but you know, I never learned anything about running a business. Um, so you know, you kind of learn as you go, and there's a steep learning curve. And in that first year, you just learn, or even 2 year, you know, first 1 to 2 years, you learn so much.
Hmm.
And now you know, it's not like I'm not learning still, but I feel like you get to a point where you have good people, you have, you know, those people that I was talking, you have a good accountant, you have a good lawyer, you have a good, you know, good staff, you know, and it kind of, it's a little bit more on autopilot, you know.
Mm.
So you have to do those little admin tasks throughout the week, but it's not like all consuming anymore, you know. So I think you do get that work life balance back a little bit, um, unless you decide to, you know, expand or bring on another, you know, dermatologist or another provider or whatever. And then, like I said, I just really try to now on the weekends just keep work at work. I don't really think about it. I don't get
Mm.
on my computer. I don't get on my iPad unless a patient texts about something, you know, just keep it
Hmm.
at work. Yeah, even now I try to not do notes or charts at home. I just try to just get it all done before I go.
I got a question for you in regards to what you just said. You mentioned the bookkeeper, you mentioned the
Yeah.
accountant, you mentioned the lawyer. How did you assemble your team? Because that's something that a
Oh,
lot of
good question.
people that we didn't really
Yeah.
think about. Like, you have to have a
Yeah.
team of advisors around you. How did you
Yeah.
find those advisors?
I found them mostly from referrals from other professionals in my area. I just kind of asked people like, who's your accountant? Who do you use for this or that? Do you have, you know, what attorney should I use to help set up my corporation? And I just got some good referrals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it is sometimes hard because, and there are a couple people where I had to just sort of, um, where you have to kind of look around and interview, and just talk to a couple people and make sure that you're on the same page, kind of like, like a financial advisor or something. You want to
Mm-hmm.
just sort of make sure that they understand your goals and all that stuff. So yeah, but it was mostly from word of mouth referrals, other
Okay.
doctors in the area who own small practices, not even dermatologists, but other plastic surgeons and people who own their own practice.
Okay. Okay.
So
And you
yeah.
talk we talked about building a team. But one thing that people don't talk about is the other side of that, when you have to remove a team member. Let's talk about that. So, have you had situations where you've had to get rid of an attorney, get rid of an accountant, or situations where you've had to get rid of a staff member or something like that?
Yeah.
What was that process like? How did you approach it? I
Yeah.
would love to get your thoughts on that, because this is the
Well,
part that people don't talk about. People don't
yeah.
realize that if you hire people,
Yeah.
eventually you're probably going to hire somebody you maybe shouldn't have hired, and you
Hmm.
may have to have a conversation about them no longer
Yeah.
working with you.
Yeah. It's really, really difficult. And for somebody, especially like me, I tend to really avoid conflict. And that's been a difficult part for me too, about managing people. I like to avoid conflict. I just kind of, you know sweep it under the rug, like,
Hmm.
okay, well, hopefully that behavior will change, and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go home and see my kids.
Yeah.
So dealing with things head on, I think, is something that you really have to do as a small business owner.
Hmm.
So, whether it's a staff member, whether it's an accountant, you know, whoever you're replacing. I mean, replacing people like accountants or attorneys or whatever. I mean, that's kind of easier, because
Yeah.
it's just kind
Yeah.
of like, hey, this isn't working out. You're not really my employee. You're kind of like a
Right.
contracting person that works with me.
Right.
Like, let's move on. I've never even met you in real life. We just
Yeah.
email.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so that's a little bit easier. But also, again, just dealing with things head on. So, like, if there is a problem with your accountant or something that they're doing, just dealing with it. And a lot of times they'll be like, "Oh, okay, I didn't know you wanted me to do that." you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, with staff, that's hard. I mean, you know, that's that I think for most small business owners, that's the biggest thing is staff, managing people. It's hard, it's difficult. Unless you're really one of those people who just, you see a problem, you just deal with it, you're very straightforward. You document everything. But not everybody's like that. So, and it's especially hard when you're seeing patients all day, you're busy, you have all this
Right.
other stuff going on, and then you're like, oh, so at some point I got to talk to that staff member, you
Yeah.
know. So making time to do that, really carving out time. So I have like a day and a half of admin time,
Hmm.
where I can meet with staff members. I'm available. I just tell them, like, if there's anything you ever need to talk to, like, come to me. I'm accessible. I'm available. We can meet on a Wednesday. We can meet on a Tuesday afternoon. Let me know. Make sure that you're always there for them.
Yeah.
Because in a way, it is like you're like kind of the mother of the clinic, you know, and
Right.
not that they're like children, but you know what I mean. You're the one that they're going to come to if they
Yeah.
have problems or issues with something that's happening in the clinic or another person in the clinic.
Yeah.
So having to juggle all that, it's a lot. You know, I didn't at first. I was like, whatever. Like, that we're adults. Like, we can all figure it out. But you really have to be that person or have somebody who can be that person for them to go to. But I think, yes, the biggest thing I've learned over the first 3 years is you have to deal with problems
Hmm.
directly
Hmm.
as they come up, and you have to document everything,
Mm.
every conversation, every little thing. I have a very good employment attorney who just kind of helps me with, like, what would you do in this situation, that situation, whatever. And she's
Hmm.
like, my staff, every single one of them, because she has her own firm. She says, every single one of them knows exactly where they stand with me at all times.
Mm.
You know, so I don't hold back if I'm not happy about this or that, or even just a comment they made. I'll document. I'll tell them and I'll document it.
Mm.
And she's like, so if I've had to fire somebody, I bring them in, and they always know what's about to happen. You
Yeah.
know,
They're not surprised because
so
they've
it's
already
not a
been. Yeah.
surprise. Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I, I
So
think that.
that's
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, but that's hard for somebody like me, and I don't know if it's like a Libra personality trait or if it's like a female physician personality trait where we feel like we don't want to rock the boat or whatever. But yeah, you really have to deal with things directly.
Absolutely. And
Hmm.
I've made that mistake that you just made in regards to people not knowing where they are. I think that
Yeah.
because my background is in sports and athletics, and
Hmm.
I'm a team guy. I'm a rah rah. I'm a you can
Yeah.
do it. We got this. Kind of
Yeah.
encourager. And because of that, what I've learned is that you can oftentimes motivate people more by highlighting the things that they're doing good and kind of not not sweeping the bad things under the rug, but not making that a big deal. And what
Yeah.
I found is that sometimes I can go overboard in that way, where when it's time to let them go, they're like, well, wait a minute. You told me that
Hmm.
I was doing a great job. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, you did a great job on that one thing, but the other five things that I just didn't
Yeah.
talk about, you weren't doing
Yeah.
such a great job. So,
Hmm.
you know, um, I realized that was a mistake on my part because when I'm sitting somebody down and letting them go and they're just completely shocked, that's my fault
Yeah.
because they shouldn't be
Yeah.
completely shocked. They should kind of know that
Exactly.
the writing was on the wall.
Yeah. I see things on like our derm like groups and things like, how would you deal with this situation? Like, this employee did that and stuff. It's like that. My biggest piece of advice is, like, you just have to have an employment attorney that knows you and your practice and that you can run these scenarios by, because nobody can
Mhm.
tell you. All the laws are different. I mean, I from what I've heard, it's like virtually impossible to fire someone in California now. Like,
Mm,
it's very difficult, very difficult.
yeah.
So you just want to make sure you're doing everything, you know, by the book for your state laws.
Yeah, and what I found, what I see, you mentioned the idea of you not necessarily being a confrontational person by
Hmm.
nature, but you having to
Yeah,
work through that, as you're stepping
yeah,
into this entrepreneurial CEO, you're a
yeah,
CEO doctor, not just a doctor.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
when you think about most businesses in general,
Hmm.
they usually build a team that people complement each other. And so
Yeah,
when something is not in a person's nature or they feel very uncomfortable being a certain way, in my personal opinion, it doesn't necessarily make sense to try to force that round peg into a square
yeah,
hole.
yeah. Hmm.
And that's kind of Mercy and I work well together because we're kind of opposite. I think Mercy kind of has
Yeah,
very much a similar personality as
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
me playing football, it was confrontation every day. You know, football is
Yeah,
confrontation. It is conflict.
confrontation. Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
that's the name of the game. And so
Hmm.
I get to be the bad guy. I don't have a
Yeah.
problem. I don't have a problem
Mhm.
being a bad guy. Now again, I'm a rah rah.
Yeah.
I'm a go team type of person. I'm not a yeller. I'm
Yeah.
not a mean person. But I'm okay having uncomfortable conversations because I personally
Yeah.
believe that most big breakthroughs happen from being uncomfortable, whether that's in the
Yeah.
gym, whether that's in
Yeah.
a marriage, whether
Yeah.
that's in business. It's like on the other side of this uncomfortableness is going to
Yeah.
be something better. We just got to get to the other side of it.
Yeah.
And so,
Mhm.
what is your thought process on um, building a team that where people complement each other?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
know we're so naturally attracted to people who oftentimes are like us, but if you
Mhm.
have a bunch of people who are the same, then it's a lot of
Yeah.
blind spots and weak spots.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's where, my husband Chris, as he is a little bit like you. I think he's I mean, he actually like loves having uncomfortable conversations, like it's almost like kind of weird.
Yeah, yeah,
But he's really good at it, and he actually, he owns and runs his own business too, and so he is very comfortable having these conversations and takes the emotion and the drama out of it.
right.
So it's nice because I have him. He's actually kind of sort of an advisor for me,
That's
and
awesome.
I'll run things by him. And he takes the complete opposite approach. And we have to kind of meet in the middle a little
Yep,
bit.
yep,
It's like I'm not gonna say it exactly the way he said it, but
yeah,
he does really encourage me to, have those hard conversations and not feel weird about it. It's just it is what it is. This is a business, and you know, you're an employee, I'm an employer. Like this is what's how I'm feeling about this thing that happened, and this is what you need to do to remedy it.
hmm
You know,
hmm
and so yeah, building that team is great. And I think, Mercy is really lucky to have you at the clinic. Chris is definitely not here at the clinic and doesn't really know the staff as well. So it's also, like I said, we kind of have to, I take his advice and I have to kind of, change it up a little bit. But, having those really, really trusted people around you is really great. And also, just even with the PA I just hired last summer, she's been here for almost a year, and she actually has a little bit of a similar personality to Chris. Not, just very direct and
yeah,
straightforward. So she's also helped me, you know, have these conversations and kind of holds me more accountable to having these conversations. Like she'll be like, "Well, you need to say this to her,"
yeah.
or whatever. So, yeah, building a good team, and I think that for me though, it's hard. Like, if I had somebody, say Chris was working here and he was the one that just had all the hard conversations, I also don't want that to be. I don't want the model to be like that either, because I think a lot of times they need to hear it from you.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to be like, oh, I can't have this conversation. I'm gonna have my manager or Chris have this conversation with you.
Right. Yeah, that's a big thing. When people talk about the idea of owning and running a practice, it's the
Mhm.
managing of the people that
Mhm.
oftentimes gets missed. But you said
Mhm.
something earlier I want to touch on. You talked about the importance of understanding the numbers and the accounting and the
Yeah.
financial projections and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to share what we do, but I would like to get your thoughts on what key metrics do you track and measure to
Yeah.
forecast growth? Like, how do you
Mhm.
know on a day to day basis, on a week to week basis, if your practice is winning? For
Yeah.
us, initially, we made the mistake of thinking that winning for us was volume. Like,
Mhm.
oh, We saw X amount of patients last week. This week we saw X plus Y. So things
Yeah.
are going well. And
Yeah.
what we quickly found was that mentality actually put us in a very, very tough financial situation, because
Mhm.
we were seeing more people than ever, right? But we had
Mhm.
more staff than ever. And we were
Mhm.
spending more on supplies than ever. And we were spending more on rent than ever. And we were
Mhm.
taking every insurance, no matter if they paid well or didn't pay at all. We
Yeah.
were just, let's get as many people in the door as possible. And
Yeah.
that put us in
Yeah.
a very, very tough spot. And what we
Yeah.
realized was it was better for us to think more about profit margin and really started to
Mhm.
think through, like, it's not how many people you see, but it's
Mhm.
what kind of profit comes from all the people you see.
Yeah.
If we're
Mhm.
seeing 10 people who are on Medicaid, it is not the same as seeing 10 cosmetic patients. They are
Yeah. Yeah.
diametrically opposite,
Mhm.
requiring different levels of admin
Yeah.
support. And, one you get paid in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 months. One you get paid today.
Yeah. Yeah.
One you got
Yeah.
to fight for. You got to put. You got your nurses on the phone, trying to get
Yeah.
a PA authorized for 45 minutes on the clock, trying to get
Yeah.
medication approved for one patient, and so what are your thought processes? What are you guys tracking? What is your key metric?
Yeah.
What are you looking at to say, if these things are happening, things are going well for us?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it wasn't the number of patients, but it was the same kind of fallacy where I was like, okay, look at the end of the day, our report, like, look how much money we made today, look how much money came in with, insurance payments or, um, our cosmetic patients. But then you also have to realize that, okay, for every Botox filler, patient you do, what's the cost of the product? And then
Right,
for all the laser patients, what's the cost of that laser and the overhead to maintain that laser? And
right,
then are paying your esthetician or paying your PA, like what are just so I'll look at a good day and I'll be like, oh, we're doing great, or like a good week, and then I'm like, then you see your monthly kind of P&L and you're like, oh, okay. I mean, okay, I shouldn't have gotten too excited, but
yeah,
so I think just realizing, like I said, kind of having that accounting, bookkeeping person who can maybe help you looking at monthly reports. I think our EMR system, EasyDerm, which is what we use. I don't know
yeah,
if you guys still use that,
we
but
do.
EasyDerm is nice because it's it allows you to run some really nice reports. So
Yep,
that's been helpful,
yep,
but looking at really the total picture, not like you said, one metric, like the number of patients or the amount of money you made that day. Um, but yeah, you have to look at the full picture.
and
Yeah.
I'm the bookkeeper person in our practice. I
Yeah.
run financial reports every Wednesday. Tomorrow is financial report
Perfect.
day. So we do a seven
Yeah.
day, we do a 30 day, we do a
Yeah.
365 day, to see
Yeah.
where we're at, to see the
Yeah.
profit and loss, and to see where things are
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Um, and it definitely it dispels any myths you may have in your face, in
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
mind, because the numbers don't
Exactly.
lie.
No.
You can feel good about a day. So a lot of times we feel
Yeah.
good, like, wow, look at all these
Yeah.
people here. It feels
Yeah.
great. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
the staff, because our nurse practitioners are not paid. They don't have a bonus or anything. They have a base salary.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
they feel great. They don't care what kind of insurance the person has, or
Yeah.
if they're in for Botox, if they're in for a skin check. They
Mhm.
just feel good seeing, like, man, I worked a full day. It was busy.
Yeah.
I saw all of
Yeah.
these people and it was great.
Yeah.
And I actually
Yeah.
had to have a conversation with one of our nurse practitioners last year, because we eliminated about 60 to 70% of the insurances that we take.
Mhm.
And our practice numbers took a nosedive, You know,
Mhm.
we our numbers dropped tremendously at first, and it's built back up. But it took 4 or 5 months, maybe 3 or 4 months before it actually started to tick back up again. And one of our nurse
Yeah.
practitioners came to us, and she was like, "Have you ever thought about, let's just go back to the old insurance?" And I'm thinking to myself, she doesn't see the numbers, so
Yeah.
she doesn't
Yeah.
see the money coming in, money coming out. So in her mind, it's just like, let's get busy again. Now
Yeah.
realizing that us being busy was, if we would have stayed busy like that for years, for a year or so more, we would have had to go out of business,
Yeah.
being busy like that. So it's
Yeah.
it, you have to be looking at the numbers to give you the true
Yeah.
vision of what's going on, not just
The
how
truth
things are
of it.
feeling.
Yeah. And one of my friends who owns a tech company, she said, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is to look and see where you're making money. Because she's like, you'll probably be surprised. You know,
Mm,
and then you can really hone in and focus on where you're actually making money. Because you think like, okay, well, I make X amount of money from this procedure, and that insurance reimburses X amount of money for this, but what are you doing in your practice that's actually making you the most money with the highest profit margin? And
hmm.
you can sometimes be surprised by those numbers. Because again, you start to think like, oh my gosh, I just did like, 2 syringes of filler and a bunch of Botox and a laser, and this person paid all this money, but then like, what's the actual overhead of that procedure? Very
Right,
high, very
right,
high. And so, is that worth an hour of your time? Could you have done, I don't know, a skin check with 3 biopsies, and is that going to make the same? Just really looking
right.
at those numbers and analyzing, and also just what you do in your practice. Like, are you really good at selling, like, these lasers? Um, then really hone in and focus on that. Because for me, we offer a lot, everything. We offer a lot of things, but there are a lot of things in my office that just sort of sit,
Mm.
and aren't really
Us,
used because I'm just not good at selling them. You
yeah,
know, I'm not good at talking about them. They don't come to my. It's basically like our body sculpting stuff. Like,
yeah,
it's great. It's a nice addition to have. People appreciate it, but most people come in and they want to talk about their hyperpigmentation or their lines on their face. And so
yeah.
we have a whole consultation. They end up doing all this stuff, and they don't even have no clue that we even have body sculpting stuff.
Right.
So, you know, yeah, it's kind of, it can be a little disappointing, but also like you have to just realize what your strengths are and like just
Yeah.
roll with
Yeah.
it.
And I can relate
Yeah.
to what you're saying, Erica. We have a whole room that's like a graveyard of equipment that
Yeah.
doesn't get used. This is like,
It's so
it's the
sad.
sad back
Yeah.
room where it's like, I don't even know what this
Yeah.
machine does. It's just
Yeah.
been sitting here since we
Yeah.
got this space. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we gotta. Yeah, it feels good to hear that somebody else is in the same
Yeah.
boat
And
and have
I'm constantly trying to like, okay, like we gotta put these machines to use. Like, let's come up with a plan. Like, what can we do? So I don't know. Someday I'll get there, but for now, they definitely kind of collect dust a little bit.
absolutely,
But
absolutely. And I
yeah,
got a few more questions for you, Erica, before we wrap up.
yeah.
But first and foremost, I want to say thank you for chatting with me. I would love to have you back
Oh, of
on
course.
again. I would
Yeah,
love to pick your brain. It's
I
just
love.
awesome.
Yeah, well, I love sharing. When you're starting a practice, it's very isolating. It's very
Yes,
difficult. Sometimes it's really hard to find like, who can I ask?
this is
You
my
know, you,
therapy session, Erica. Right now, right
yeah,
now, you're my
yeah,
therapist right now, and so
yeah,
this has been great for me for
yeah,
us to be able to have this conversation and talk.
yeah. But like I talked to Mercy a lot when I started. Just asking all these, all the people that have done it.
Hmm.
And then you kind of feel like you can't ask people in your local community, because you don't
Right,
want to. You're kind of like their competition or whatever, and
right.
so you end up talking to all your friends from out of state that have done it, or
Hmm.
are thinking of doing it, and you guys kind of go through the steps together, and yeah, it's really hard. So to have to have these conversations and have a resource for people, at least somewhere for them to start, and um, looking into these kinds of things. It's really nice.
Absolutely. And so my final question for you is, and again, like I said, I want to definitely do this again. I would like to bring you on to pick your
Yeah,
brain about more topics. But my final question to you is, were if you were talking to someone who was thinking
yeah,
about starting their own practice and you had to give them
yeah,
words of wisdom, a piece of advice,
yeah,
a few pieces of advice, what would you tell them as they're starting their practice? What advice would you give them to start? And then would it be the same advice that you would give them once they're up and going and running? And if
yeah.
it's the same thing, then it's the same thing. But if it's different, what would be those two different pieces of advice?
No, and I mean, I've had people, our friends, some of our friends from residency and stuff, asking about it, and they're thinking about starting their own or whatever. And it's just, I say, for me at least, professionally, it's been a lot more rewarding and fulfilling, and just I love it, compared to any other job I've ever had.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of work, but it's not. I think you told me this once, Tony, but it was like, we went through medical school and derm residency, like we can learn how to run a business.
Exactly.
Like it's not rocket science.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
a lot of
Put it
work,
like
and you
this: it's
have
a lot
to,
of people who can run a
yeah,
business. There's more people who can run a business
yeah,
than that could become a doctor.
yeah, yeah,
Let's go. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So, and not to say running a business is easy, but you can figure it out,
Right.
and it's definitely worth it in my opinion. Um, and I always say too, like, it's scary. It's really scary. It's a scary leap to take. You don't, as doctors, we have whatever, all kinds of responsibilities, our mortgages, our kids, our cars, this lifestyle that you create, working as a dermatologist.
Hmm.
You might have student loans, you still have to pay off all this stuff. So it's scary to take that leap. But, start slow, start small, kind of like you and Mercy did. I started with a very small space. I found a space that was already built for medical, so I didn't have to tear down any walls. I just
Mm.
kind of redid cosmetic, cabinets and paint and art and mirrors. Um, and then we did a sort of a bigger build out last year, and that was really fun. But, don't start out with a huge $1 million loan,
Yes.
that's just gonna that's too much to take on,
Hmm.
and then keep in the back of your mind that you're a doctor, you're a dermatologist, and worst case scenario, if all else fails, you can go
Hmm.
back to working for a big clinic.
Right.
Not that it will, but it's kind of like peace of mind. Like, okay, if all else fails,
Hmm.
I can just go work at the hospital down the street. They're
Right.
always hiring, right?
Hmm.
So, um, yeah, it's tough, but it's so doable and it's worth it. And in reality, it's not as big of a risk as you think it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Man, that was great. That was
Yeah.
great advice. Erica, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me
Yeah.
today.
Thank you. Of
Thank you.
course.
Thank you for being my therapist today and
Oh my gosh,
allowing
please.
us to
You and
connect
Mercy
on.
have been always there for me too. We have to support each other and,
Absolutely.
you know,
It takes a
have these
community.
conversations.
And you said
Yeah.
something very big because I do feel like that's again one of the things that that motivated me to talk to people like you and to create this platform because
Hmm.
I feel like in the medical space, specifically in the derm space, is not as much collaboration as it could be. You'll
Yeah.
find that in a lot of other businesses, people are getting together and they're
Hmm.
talking in their mastermind groups
Hmm.
and I'm using this and
Yeah.
how is that working for you? And it,
Hmm.
it seems a little bit unnecessarily competitive a lot of times.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
we want to kind of break some of those walls down because
Yeah.
that competitive nature, it actually, actually
That's
uh,
just how we are. We're very competitive.
yeah, but I think the problem is that a lot of derms believe that the derm the derm practice down the street is their competition. When in actuality,
Yeah.
their competition is big hospitals. Their
Yeah.
competition is big pharma. Their competition is
Mhm.
big private equity groups, and these people
Mhm.
prey on the division
Mhm.
between private
Yeah.
practices, and that's why they can come and pluck
Mhm.
private practices up for pennies on the dollar and take over and
Yeah.
expand because everybody's fighting amongst each other.
Yeah.
Where it's enough for everybody if people were collaborating. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's my 2 cents. Erica, thank you.
Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, and we will be
Of
chatting some more in the
course.
future.
Anytime.
What other specific topics related to the business of private practice management would you like for us to cover? Please share in the comments below or reach out to us on social media or our email address, thedermbiz@gmail.com. Our mission is to create a movement of collaboration and support amongst physician-owned private practice owners. If you would like to join that movement, again, don't forget to like, share, comment, and please don't forget to subscribe.